Hey guys, welcome to Bullshit Fridays, Rambling Friday series. In this video, I want to talk about the public education system of America versus Russia. If you guys know my story, my biography is I was born and raised in Russia. I came here when I was 13, and I got to see both kind of educational systems in Russia and over here. When I was 11, my little brother was born, and all the attention got shifted to him, and I was sort of neglected for a while. And as a result, I can tell you that I was not doing very well in school. Towards the end, right before coming here, I was pretty much flunking everything. I got a passing grade for all my classes, but it was just an incredible favor. Basically, it was like a pity pass. Math, English, Russian, physics, everything was just, I was failing everything. Anyway, I came here and it was a clean slate. Somehow back then in Russia, I was sort of a hooligan. I was smoking, drinking, not doing so well in school, despite, all of my extracurricular activities. I was a little bit of a troublemaker. But then I came here, and when I started 8th grade in America, I got like a little bit of reserve. Some of the stuff that we were covering in school, in math specifically, I had learned that already. So it was a way for me to catch up. And I started just studying hard, and I joined this sort of an honor society. Basically, if you have a 90 or above average, you were in this honor society called Arista at my junior high school, and I was the only guy out of the class who got into that. There were only 3 girls and me from the whole class. So I just became a very good student by and large here. So the main differences that I can tell you about, back then in Russia, it was just basically one school. You started what happened to me, I went to kindergarten, and then the first grade was at the kindergarten, like not the school, but at the kindergarten. And then I switched to this school, and it was second grade till 11th grade. Everybody was together. Mostly the same class would go to all of the classes, with the exception of at my school, we had a secondary foreign language. So my school taught English, and then in 6th grade, it was another additional language. So we split up. Some kids were studying French, some kids were studying Spanish, some kids like me were studying German. And yeah, everything was together. And another exception was English classes. For the English classes, we're also kind of divided into smaller groups to facilitate kind of conversation in English. But other than that, everybody just traveled together. And the same thing is really like that when it comes to going to universities or colleges. Everybody stuck together. Nobody kind of elected all these courses or classes like we do in America. Okay, so that was that. Also, the school was a lot smaller. It was we had my grade was just like class A, class B, and class C. So just 3 classes. And towards the end, around I think it was after 5th grade, they got rid of class C, so we got absorbed into A and B. It was a terrible, terrible tragedy, because you make friends, and then all of a sudden you don't get to see your friends because they're in another class. here, my high school had over 4,000 students, so it was just like a city in itself. And even in junior high school, we constantly got mixed up just for no reason. Every quarter, we're just like, okay, now we're just gonna take the class and get different teachers, get everything. Somebody goes here, somebody goes there. So as a result, in America, it's very hard to form bonds. In my experience, you see somebody and then you just like never see them again. Maybe you'll run into them, but you don't really form friendships like you do in Russia. Because in Russia, to this day, I can tell you that I keep contact with my old classmates, and when I go back to Russia, currently maybe once a year, I stop by and I hang out with my classmates. I can't tell you that the same thing applies here. I know maybe a few kids from my high school, but I'm not friends with them. Same thing about the university. I have a few kind of friends, acquaintances, but it's not as strong of a bond. Everybody keeps ripping on the American education system, that it's not as strong. What I find is that in America, it's all about your desire to learn. In my high school, you could get by just taking the bare minimum classes. You only need 3 math classes to graduate, so you don't need to take anything additional. But if you want, for example, with me, I took 3 basic, like, core math classes, and then I took pre-calculus, and then I took calculus. And for calculus, we had regular calculus, AB calculus, BC calculus, like also advanced placement classes. You can just take regular chemistry, or you can take advanced placement chemistry. So it's all about how hard you want it to be for yourself, whether you want to learn or you want to just get by and get the minimum. So I think it's actually great because it kind of weeds out all the mediocre students, because they naturally don't take those hard classes. In Russia, it was different. The whole school was just advanced placement in itself, or it was just like a regular school. It just depended on where you went in terms of school. Another thing is just a funny thing. Like, Russian language is incredibly complicated compared to other languages. I can tell you that I don't know about how hard it is to learn a language, but it's all different factors combined. The phonetics of the language, the written part of the language. I can tell you that Russian grammar is the hardest one out of all the languages. You have conjugations, you conjugate verbs, you conjugate adverbs and adjectives, you have cases for all the verbs, and there's so many rules and exceptions. It's just like compared to English, that is just overly simplified, that you sometimes even need to spell out what it is you're saying using words like he is doing something as opposed to just doing. In Russian, you can just write an entire poem out of verbs in particular cases. I don't know what those things are called, cases. But like pronouns in English sometimes are required, otherwise you don't have the gender meaning context in your sentence. And a lot of time was spent on grammar and spelling and punctuation and cursive writing. And when you write a dictation, which we often had dictations for various topics we're learning, especially I'm talking about Russian language. We also had these like citywide tests, dictations. And they would mark off your grade if your cursive writing was just illegible, or if you missed the comma, or if you placed the comma where it's not supposed to be, or if you had some spelling errors. So it was just, you have to be uh, literate when you graduate school. Otherwise, you can't pass your classes. So a lot of attention was spent on that. When it comes to learning English, I've taken your regular writing classes. First of all, no cursive writing. You just use regular letters. I don't know why that is. Not cursive writing is kind of neglected, but punctuation was never emphasized. I mean, obviously spelling was kind of important, but to me, to this day, I still don't understand the rules of punctuation in the English language. I use this sort of Russian kind of punctuation, like if you have two sentences, two independent clauses, you put a comma. Or if you explain, like, I have a guitar which was designed, like something like that, you put a comma before which, or you have, if you list things, you can put like a colon. But it was just like, do whatever you want, basically, as long as it's not horribly illiterate, you will get a good grade. And as a result, there's so many, even in the professional field, there's so many people who I would when I was learning English, we would get marked off for confusing your and your, or there and there, or it's, like not putting the apostrophe or putting the apostrophe. It was like, go on, that's so basic. In America, I get emails all the time and people confuse it's with it's, there with there. So in short, the American public education system, I can only judge by the New York State Board of Education, is great. Gives you like all these possibilities to take all these advanced classes. Like in Russia, for example, calculus was only taken in college, or I even took programming here in my high school. Like that in Russia would never. I guess there were some schools that specialize in that, but like you just have a buffet of stuff you could take. I took music. We had musical theater, orchestra, jazz band, wind ensemble. In Russia, it was just kind of a focused school on just focused on one thing. Well, there you go. If you're curious, if you want to learn more, drop me a line, comment, subscribe. Thanks for watching.